Tears of the Kingdom is a truly beautiful game. And I don't mean beauty in only the sense of how good it looks, but the feelings it can evoke and the beauty of just exploring the world. Your first sequence of cannoning out of a tower into the sky and diving back down while entangled with this majestic music is awe-inspiring. The verticality that Nintendo brings to Tears, quite literally and figuratively, gives you an entirely new perspective on the game. Being able to see the entire world from up above, combined with the ability to go anywhere that you can see, is a huge part of what makes this game so exceptional. This, along with the Sky Islands, are the best additions to the game from Breath of the Wild. That may sound strange to those of you who loved using the Ultra Hand, and that's totally fair and reasonable. The Ultra Hand is a super fun toy, and Tears does a great job of designing the game around it, but the Sky Islands evoked far more out of me than the Ultra Hand ever will, so I guess I should say it's my favorite addition to the game. While the Sky Islands take the game to such great heights, they also have some glaring flaws that hold them back from being truly amazing. The largest one being that they break some aspects of exploration with new problems that didn't exist in its predecessor. You might be thinking I've contradicted myself in saying that the Sky Islands made the game both incredible and dreadful for me to play. I understand this is confusing, but bear with me. To understand this dilemma, let's first take a look at the design of Breath of the Wild and how I interacted with that. The foundation of Breath of the Wild's design is exploration, as is Tears of the Kingdom. Everything in this game is created and molded to be fit in a way that gives you reasons to run around the world and discover new things. Finding shrines, Korok seeds, towers, stables, great fairies, using the glider, riding horses, doing side quests, and on and on and on. All of these are something you are meant to do while exploring, or are the reason themselves to explore. The more you look at the game's mechanics, the easier it is to see how every single mechanic in the game is designed with exploration in mind. Taking this even further, we can see how seemingly even unrelated mechanics like weapon durability are actually designed around this idea. It seems likely that weapon durability was made with the intent of motivating players to explore and find more weapons. But as many of you know, this is one of the most hated mechanics of Breath of the Wild, and for good reason. It can be incredibly annoying and tiresome to deal with, especially near the start of the game. Despite this system and its flawed implementation, the foundational idea of it is solid. But it could have easily been improved upon in ways to make it a much better system while still using exploration as its base. Like adding ways to repair weapons with materials, things you find while exploring. Anyways, the intent of each system is crafted in a way to motivate you to explore more, and of course trying to make it fun to do in the process. And the way this all comes together is what makes exploring in Breath of the Wild so close to perfect. It's simply one of the best open world experiences that exist. Getting your glider and jumping off the Great Plateau is one of my favorite moments I've had in a game. It feels completely freeing to soar into the unknown and go wherever you want. This works because nearly any direction you choose to go in Breath of the Wild's world will be fun. The world is not only impressively huge, but each part of it is masterfully crafted to make it feel alive. And not because the world is bustling with characters, but because there's so much to do and see in every little nook and cranny that exists in the game. Just by looking into the distance, you wouldn't ever know there's dozens of hidden secrets just a short walk from you. The game manages to have a massive amount of seemingly negative space that is actually 100 hours worth of things to do. Of course, depending on what kind of player you are, only a tenth of that might feel fun to do, since it does get a bit repetitive. But I also don't think the game is designed with the intention that the average player will do every shrine and find every Korok seed. Although you're free to pretty much do whatever you want in-game, however and whenever you want to, it creates an unusual kind of problem. Having little to no linearity means that players have to decide for themselves what to do and how to do it. With the gameplay of both Breath of the Wild and Tears being far less constricted, it can be difficult to finely tune the fun for each and every player and how they may choose to play. I imagine some people decided to just run in a direction and see what they could find, while others may have systematically explored every inch of every area. My preferred strategy was to look out in the distance and find a place I wanted to go, and then find my way there and do any other interesting activities I could see on the way. For example, maybe I'll see a tower I haven't reached yet, and run that way to reveal more of the map. But on this journey, it's unlikely you'll find your way there without doing anything else first. Maybe you'll play around with some rocks and find yourself a Korok seed, and later down the path you might see a shrine, so might as well get that out of the way. Or maybe you'll take down a camp of monsters and grab the loot. There could even be a broken down ruin on the path, so time for a pit stop to snag any chests. And eventually, after enough distractions, you'll make it to the tower. And once you've finally reached your destination, you can gaze upon your path here from the top to reminisce on your little journey, figure out what you want to see next, and then take flight. Exploring the world your first time is a non-stop adventure packed with things to do no matter what your goals are. Tears is built in exactly the same way, and designed to functionally work the same way, but the problem is when you're playing Tears, you have cheat codes activated compared to when playing Breath of the Wild. For example, in Tears, just like in Breath of the Wild, I want to head to a tower I haven't been to yet. My best way to get there is to just teleport to the Sky Island closest to the tower. So I go to the nearest sky island, run up the top, and just fly my way down. I slowly drift there and look at the sights, and before I know it, I land. I go up, get my map updated, and I'm on my way. It was a nice view along the way, soaring through the sky, but it's lacking something. There was no real adventure. Now, to be fair to Tears, this is really only a problem after the first 8 or 10 hours after you get through the tutorial and get yourself a little more acquainted with how the game works. This problem mostly exists for people like me who have a destination in mind and try to find their best route there. But if you play this game with a more systematically search for everything approach, you probably had an entirely different experience. Playing like this totally avoids most of this issue, since your exploration isn't get to this place and more find what's in this place. While my playstyle in Breath of the Wild was still fun and worked well because I ended up in phases of find what's in this place on my way to the place. But now that my on the way to the place has become this weird form of fast travel, that experience of find what's in this place no longer exists unless I seek it out myself. But that doesn't feel nearly as organic or fun for me to do. The underlying issue causing this problem has to do with finding the path of least resistance, which is of course flying to your destination from the Sky Island. It's by far the most safe, easy, and convenient way to travel. Another part of this issue is that besides the Sky Islands, there's little to nothing to see or visit in the sky. And this creates the problem. There's no resistance to stop you from freely traveling through the skies. And what fun is the gameplay in Zelda, or any game for that matter, without a little bit of resistance in your path? That's kind of what makes things games, and also what makes games fun, right? It's why when you cheat in a video game and suddenly you can steamroll through everything, it gets really boring really fast. Cheating can be in a way its own path of least resistance to win a game, but it is often the most boring path. The world of Breath of the Wild was far less forgiving, and you are much more likely to find yourself faced with resistance no matter what path you took. For example, the patrolling guardians all over the fields near the palace, or near the towers, or just on the roads, or even a fort of bokoblins blocking a path on a small bridge. The game forced you to figure out how to maneuver around these challenges or fight your way through them. This kind of resistance no longer exists in the overworld of Tears of the Kingdom. There's really nothing close to something like the Guardians except for in the Depths, which has its own myriad of problems. So the reason I didn't absolutely love Tears was not because the map is reused or that the Sky Islands and the Depths are really bland and repetitive, but once I had found the path of least resistance for exploring, the game felt broken and no longer enjoyable to play. What was once a grand adventure exploring the world of Hyrule effectively became a chore of how efficiently I can find each tower and shrine by way of Sky Island. Exploring didn't feel as organic as it did in Breath of the Wild for my playstyle. It was far too easy to cut myself out of the game's core mechanics that it was built around. Essentially, Tears has a major issue, where the path of least resistance in Breath of the Wild was much more difficult than the path of least resistance in Tears of the Kingdom. So while the Sky Islands are amazing and a cool feature, their biggest design flaw is largely where they're placed and how easy it is to get to them. My path was only the path of least resistance because getting to the Sky Islands was so easy to do, and then getting from one Sky Island to the next tower and then the next Sky Island again is really simple work, making running through the map and getting the main objectives far too easy to do. Although this problem has a surprisingly easy solution, Nintendo could have made flying through the skies a much more perilous event near the beginning of the game, such as adding a ton of flying enemies in the skies that are very dangerous, maybe something akin to the flying guardians that shoot laser beams, making them really swarm the skies around each area until you do so much of it, essentially gating you from using the skies as a superhighway until you do so many shrines, Korok seeds, or the temple. They could have also made parts of the sky corrupted until you clear it out somehow, or get enough gear to resist it. This is a mechanic that already exists in the form of heat and cold throughout the game, so why not add another one? Ultimately, it feels like there was a lot of ways to avoid this issue, but it's likely Nintendo failed to realize it was even a problem at all. Now, you could boil this all down to something it's about the journey and not the destination, but I doubt I'm the only person who accidentally ended up playing the game like this. And on top of that, it's entirely possible to design around this issue while also keeping the game just as enjoyable, if not more, for everyone else who already really liked it. So unfortunately, I do see this as a huge design mistake by Nintendo. Coming back to the root of this flaw, exploring the Sky Islands themselves cannot be so easily cheated. You can still get a little bit of that Breath of the Wild feeling. Or at least I had hoped. But unfortunately the Sky Islands are fairly small, and in their totality they're a repetitive, meticulous, mediocre mess. You'll hardly see any kind of variety in any shape or form while exploring all of the Sky Islands. There's what feels like an endless amount of platforms that hold the same exact cube boss that can be easily defeated the same exact way each and every time. And even more unfortunate is that the depths are much worse. You won't find that same unique beauty that each cozy nook of Hyrule holds in the Sky Islands above or the depths below it. I unfortunately realized this far too quickly during my first time playing, because as soon as the tutorial finally ended, my goal was to explore every single Sky Island, and while the first few were fantastic and the game felt amazing, that feeling slowly simmered. As you might imagine, if you start to visit each Sky Island one after the next, expecting to find something new, that you would slowly run into disappointment after disappointment. Maybe it's a flaw in me that I shouldn't have expected the Sky Islands or the depths to be as unique and fun-filled as Hyrule, but at the same time, I feel like it isn't such a high expectation to have for a game and studio of this caliber, as well as how well done it was in the previous title. So while I was hoping to find that same beauty that I could find by exploring Hyrule in the sky, I was instead continually brought back to reality where the Sky Islands are nothing close to what I dreamed of. Even if they do make the game more beautiful, thinking about the actual gameplay value they add makes me want to puke. Honestly, I would have far preferred it if they just simply had fewer Sky Islands, and then we were only left with the unique ones. Then at least each one would have felt special and deserving of its place. Instead, visiting a near exact copy and paste of another Sky Island you've already been to only diminishes how special the first one felt to visit. I had thought for a long time that if I had never played Breath of the Wild, I would probably love Tears of the Kingdom just as much as everyone else. But now I'm starting to come to the conclusion that that wouldn't be true. The exploration, while still present, feels far more empty in Tears than it did in Breath of the Wild. Nintendo simply didn't have enough variation in their copy and paste throughout the world. Continually seeing the same exact corporate shill worshipping some CEO by holding his shitty sign in the snow, rain, day, and night right next to the same garbage pile of wood placed every other 100 yards was one of the most annoying things to see over and over again. So anytime I was exploring, it never felt like I was seeing anything new. Exploration felt forced, dull, and systematic instead of being organic and natural. On top of that, the tools felt too easy to abuse. Once time reversal became your friend, any challenge or puzzle that was thrown my way felt like a total joke. This isn't me being creative, it instead just feels like the game devs never realized how easy it was to trivialize the game using one mechanic. All of this made me come to the realization that I was playing the game wrong, or rather this game wasn't made for someone like me. During the week the game released, I was talking with one of my good friends who really enjoyed the game. After some discussion of how we both played the game and talking about what some of the problems might be with it, he told me, "I think you're just playing the game wrong, man." At this point I was still blindly playing without understanding why I didn't like the game as much as Breath of the Wild, but clearly there was something my friend and so many other people loved about the game, so I kept trying to find it. But all I could think was, how in the world do you play an open world game the wrong way? Well, it turns out my friend was right, because I was playing the game wrong. I've always felt that open world games are about freedom and doing things the way you preferred, and the problem here is that despite Tears of the Kingdom being an open world game, it's possible to play it the wrong way. And I think when you can play an open world game the wrong way without purposefully trying to do so, I believe that's a design issue. And this is why I find the Sky Islands to be the single worst and best designed thing in Tears of the Kingdom. Like I mentioned earlier, I find that it's very difficult to find a way to play Breath of the Wild incorrectly. Any direction you go from the start will lead you towards good gameplay, and a path with some sort of resistance. But clearly this is not always the case in Tears. Speaking of a direction you might fall into going too early is the depths. I don't think going to the depths too early would necessarily always lead to bad gameplay. There's plenty of people that like that kind of thing, and it can also end up being something to aspire to explore later. But I think the depths do bring a different kind of resistance that's likely to cause a lot of people to avoid them entirely, especially near the beginning of the game. While the depths have many flaws when it comes to exploring them, it's not the same problem that the Sky Islands have. There's not so much a path of least resistance that makes them too easy to explore, rather there are only paths that scream stay away from here and ooze resistance. The ultimate problem with the depths for me is that the darkness and the repetitiveness quickly killed my interest in exploring them at all. Usually I don't prefer to be blindfolded during exploration. Like I said, I like to have a destination to go towards. So the only reason I went down there in the first place was to go towards some marked treasure map I had found, which was just a piece of armor from a previous game. After doing a few more of these maps, it became unfortunately clear that pretty much every single one of these marked maps was going to lead to something similar. As I said, I like to see a destination, somewhere to aspire to be, and go there. It's quite literally the entire tagline for Breath of the Wild. See that mountain? You can go there. It's what we've been memeing about for years, but it's actually what makes the game so good.
You can even reach those mountains in the distance if you walk far enough.
Yet in the case of the depths, the mountain is upside down and you can't see it, so how do you choose where to go? Obviously, you can just kind of blindly run in whatever direction feels best, or use the treasure maps. Maybe some people really like playing the game in one of these ways, but I personally don't find them nearly as fun as picking a place and finding my way there. So if you want to play the game like I prefer, you're now kind of tasked to find a way to light the place up yourself, which might involve going to the seed things that light up portions of the map, each one correlating to a shrine above, or you just throw around light bloom seeds everywhere. And unfortunately, both of these get really tiresome really fast. And this is where the Ultra Hand comes into play. If we think about how the game was originally designed to be explored, it was with the tools given to you in Breath of the Wild, which of course we no longer have, but instead have something much stronger. While Nintendo certainly redesigns many parts of the map to be explored with the Ultra Hand in mind, many parts of it are not. And where best to put a new map designed to be explored with the new tools than above it or below it. So of course, the best way of traversing the depths and the Sky Islands is by far using the new toy Nintendo has bestowed upon you. While this is also true for the mainland, the Sky Islands and the depths feel more intentionally designed to be explored with the Ultra Hand. But the issue here is that in order for this to really be a viable strategy, you need to upgrade your battery first. Unfortunately, the best way to do this is by running through the depths looking for Zonite. And the worst thing of all is by the time you've done all of this and can actually see somewhere you'd like to go, you've already been there. So this kind of gameplay literally just sucked out all of the fun parts of exploration for me. Now, I don't entirely hate the idea of a few areas being pitch black and it needs to be lit up. In fact, I think that can actually make it really stand out as a point of interest, such as the Storm Island in the sky. If you can see an area in the distance that's totally pitch black, that makes it really intriguing, but if you can't see anything at all, then nothing is intriguing. If the depths would have been mostly lit up with some pitch black places, I think it would have been a far better experience. At the very least, the depths should have had at least 1 or 2 places that are already lit up in the distance, just to have some sort of direction or point of interest. But having everything be pitch black from the start is just not a fun experience for me. My final problem with the depths is that it feels like they don't have enough purpose to justify all of it existing. While there are definitely some cool experiences in the depths, like the Lava Temple, putting together the robot, and finding Hyrule Temple, most areas that you uncover felt like a copy and paste of nearly every other area in the depths where you can just get a piece of loot and mine some Zonite. I think they could have done a much better job of mixing in shrines and other goods between the depths and the surface, giving you more variety in both areas. Overall, I think Tears is a fantastic game, even if it's not at all what I expected. I was really hoping for another game with similar exploration to Breath of the Wild. I know people love using the Ultra Hand, the physics, and everything else, with even the sole reason they might love the game being how creative you can get with the Ultra Hand. But the toys, shrines, and everything else aren't the reasons why I loved Breath of the Wild, they just help lift up the thing that I liked about it the most. Because my love for Breath of the Wild comes from how exploration was done and its world design. I'm in no way trying to say that your fun is invalid or something crazy like that, just trying to help people understand why the game wasn't nearly as fun for me. This may have not been the opinion you were looking for or expecting, hell it's not really even the one I was very eager to share myself. But I figured maybe it can help someone else understand why they also didn't like the game if they felt at all similar to me, as well as help those who really loved the game understand why some people may not have enjoyed it as much as they did. I think it's also important to recognize that a lot of this is subjective and that we can all enjoy similar things in our own ways. But at the same time, recognize that it can be the case that someone doesn't enjoy a game as much because of a design flaw, even if it's tough to see. I like flawed things all the time, but their design could have been altered in a way that greatly improves someone else's enjoyment of that thing while hardly changing mine. I think this is an important aspect to recognize for designers and try to catch it where it's possible. But it won't always be possible or even an option. Sometimes the design is good, but a certain kind of person won't ever like it no matter what. And that's the hardest thing of all, knowing when it's subjective versus a design issue, which even then can get muddied sometimes because design itself is often subjective. But all of this is what makes it so important to try and understand why you like something and why you don't. Anyways, if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and I'd love to know what you enjoyed about Tears of the Kingdom and what you didn't. Ultimately, the purpose of these videos are for creating discussion around games and their design, as well as helping others understand design and recognize what they like and don't like about certain games. So please leave a comment down below if you have any insights of your own, or if you just want to share your thoughts, and I'll do my best to respond. And until next time, see ya.